Most people just stumble out of bed. The alarm goes off and they're already defeated before their feet hit the floor. They drag themselves to the bathroom, looking in the mirror with disappointment, and their first thoughts are about what they don't have, what they haven't accomplished, and why today is probably going to be just like yesterday. But extraordinary people, the ones who build remarkable lives, they do something different. They take control of those first precious moments of consciousness. They understand that how you start your day isn't just important, it's everything. So today I want to share with you 5 powerful statements, 5 things you should say to yourself every single morning. And I promise you, if you make these 5 statements part of your morning ritual, your life will begin to transform in ways you cannot even imagine. Number 1, I am responsible. Such a simple phrase, isn't it? Just 3 words. I am responsible. But within those 3 words lies the foundation of all success, all achievement, and all personal growth. You see, the moment you say to yourself, I am responsible, you're making a profound philosophical choice. You're deciding that you are not a victim of circumstances. You're deciding that while you may not control everything that happens to you, you absolutely control how you respond to what happens to you. Most people spend their lives in blame. The economy, the government, their boss, their spouse, their parents, there's always someone or something to blame for why things aren't working out. And as long as you're blaming, you're giving away your power. But when you wake up and say, I am responsible, you're taking that power back. You're saying, this is my life, and I am the architect of my destiny. I remember meeting a gentleman years ago who had lost everything in a business failure. Everything. His home, his savings, his reputation in the community. He told me, Jim, I spent 6 months blaming my partner, blaming the market, blaming the bank. And during those 6 months, I was the most miserable human being on earth. But then one morning, I looked in the mirror and said, I am responsible. And that was the day my new life began. 3 years later, that same man had built a business twice as successful as the one he'd lost. Why? Because he took responsibility. So tomorrow morning, let those be the first words out of your mouth. I am responsible. Say it with conviction. Say it like you mean it. I am responsible for my actions, my reactions, my successes, and my failures. I am responsible for the quality of my life. Number 2, something wonderful is about to happen. Now, some people might call this wishful thinking, but I call it setting a powerful expectation. You see, what you expect tends to be realized. If you wake up expecting problems, difficulties, and struggles, guess what you're going to find? Problems, difficulties, and struggles. Your mind is like a heat-seeking missile. It will find evidence to support whatever you program it to look for. But when you say to yourself something wonderful is about to happen, you're programming your mind to be on the lookout for opportunities, possibilities, and potential breakthroughs. I'm not suggesting that problems won't arise. Of course they will. That's life. But when you start your day with the expectation that something wonderful is about to happen, you'll navigate those problems with a different spirit, a different energy. I knew a saleswoman who made it a practice to say this to herself every morning before making her calls. She told me, Jim, some days the wonderful thing is a big commission. Other days, it's a new contact that will pay dividends down the road. And some days the wonderful thing is simply the lesson I learned from rejection. But there's always something wonderful if I'm looking for it. That saleswoman went from average performance to setting company records in just under a year. Nothing changed except her expectation that something wonderful was about to happen. So tomorrow morning, after you've taken responsibility, look in the mirror and say with genuine anticipation, something wonderful is about to happen. And then watch as your mind begins to make it so. Number 3, I have all that I need to succeed today. This is a powerful antidote to the disease of if only thinking that plagues so many people. If only I had more time. If only I had more money. If only I had better connections. If only I had more education. The truth is, most of us already have everything we need to take the next step toward our goals. We just don't recognize it because we're so focused on what we don't have. When you say to yourself, I have all that I need to succeed today, you're shifting your focus from scarcity to abundance. You're reminding yourself that success doesn't usually require some dramatic change in circumstances. It simply requires making the most of what you already have. Consider the story of 2 young entrepreneurs I once met. They had identical business ideas, identical education, and identical market opportunities. One kept lamenting that he needed more capital to really make his business take off. The other one said, I have all I need to succeed today, and focused on maximizing his resources, building relationships, and providing exceptional value. A year later, the first entrepreneur was still talking about what he needed. The second had built a thriving business that was generating enough profit to fund its own expansion. The difference wasn't resources, it was resourcefulness. And resourcefulness begins with the belief that you have what you need to take the next step. So tomorrow morning, look in the mirror and affirm, I have all that I need to succeed today. Then ask yourself, what resources do I already possess that I haven't fully utilized? What strengths, skills, relationships, or opportunities am I overlooking? Number 4, I will focus on progress, not perfection. You know, perfectionism has killed more dreams than failure ever has. The person who insists that conditions be perfect before they take action is the person who never takes action at all. When you say to yourself, I will focus on progress, not perfection, you're giving yourself permission to start where you are with what you have. You're acknowledging that the path to any worthy goal isn't a single giant leap. It's a series of small steps. I had a friend who wanted to write a book. For years he talked about this book. He had the concept, he had the outline, he had the passion for the subject, but he never wrote a single word. Why? Because in his mind he needed the perfect writing environment, the perfect schedule, the perfect state of mind. One day I suggested a simple shift. Instead of aiming to write the perfect book, what if he just tried to write a single page? Just one page, imperfect as it might be. He took that advice, and you know what happened? That first imperfect page led to another and another. 6 months later, he had a completed manuscript. Was it perfect? No, but it was done. And a done imperfect book is infinitely more valuable than a perfect book that exists only in your imagination. That's the power of focusing on progress rather than perfection. It gets you moving. And once you're in motion, you can make adjustments along the way. So tomorrow morning, look in the mirror and say, today I will focus on progress, not perfection. Then ask yourself, what's one small step I can take today toward my most important goal? Take that step, however imperfect it might be. Number 5, I choose gratitude. Of all the things you can say to yourself each morning, this may be the most transformative. I choose gratitude. Notice I didn't say, I feel grateful. Feelings come and go. They're influenced by circumstances, by health or by 1,000 variables outside your control. But gratitude is a choice. That's different. That's saying, regardless of what's happening around me or to me, I am choosing to focus on what's good in my life. This isn't denial. It's not pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's simply recognizing that in every life, even in the midst of challenges, there are things worthy of gratitude. And what you focus on expands. I met a woman once who had endured more hardship than most people could imagine. She had lost her husband, her home, and her health in the span of just 2 years. When I asked her how she maintained her remarkable spirit, she said, every morning I say to myself, I choose gratitude. Then I identify 5 specific things I'm grateful for before I get out of bed. Sometimes they're big things like my children. Sometimes they're simple things like the warmth of my blanket or the sound of birds outside my window. But I always find 5 things. That daily practice of chosen gratitude had kept her from bitterness, from self-pity, and from giving up. It had kept her heart open to the good that still remained in her life. So tomorrow morning, say to yourself with conviction, I choose gratitude. Then identify 5 specific things you're grateful for. Say them out loud. Feel the gratitude in your body. Let it fill you up before you even start your day. Now, these 5 statements, I am responsible, something wonderful is about to happen. I have all that I need to succeed today. I will focus on progress, not perfection, and I choose gratitude. They might seem simple, and they are. But don't confuse simplicity with lack of power. The most profound truths, the most transformative practices are often the simplest. It's not their complexity that makes them effective, it's their consistent application. And that brings me to an important point. These 5 statements are not magic incantations. Simply saying the words without conviction won't change your life. You have to say them like you mean them. You have to let them sink from your lips to your mind to your heart. You have to allow them to shape not just your morning, but the actions you take throughout your day. You know, I often tell people that discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And establishing this morning ritual of powerful self-talk is an act of discipline. At first it might feel awkward. You might forget. You might doubt whether it's making any difference. But if you persist, if you make these 5 statements part of your morning ritual for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, they will begin to rewire the way you think. And when you change your thinking, you change your actions. And when you change your actions, you change your results. I want to emphasize something important here. These 5 statements aren't just about feeling better. They're about performing better. They're about creating the mental and emotional conditions that lead to better decisions, more effective actions, and ultimately superior results. Consider the difference between two salespeople making cold calls. The first wakes up dreading the day, thinking about all the rejection ahead, doubting their abilities, and feeling like they need something they don't have in order to succeed. The second wakes up and says, I am responsible for my results today. Something wonderful is about to happen. I have everything I need to succeed. I will focus on progress, not perfection. And I choose gratitude for this opportunity. Which salesperson do you think will make more effective calls? Which one will persist through rejection? Which one will identify and seize opportunities? Which one will end the day with better results? The answer is obvious. The second salesperson has created an internal environment conducive to success. Not because they're denying reality, but because they're choosing to focus on the aspects of reality that empower rather than diminish them. Now, let me share a little secret with you. These 5 morning statements are not just for beginners. They're not training wheels that you eventually outgrow. I've been in business for decades. I've achieved a level of success that once seemed impossible to me, and yet every morning I still say these things to myself. Why? Because success isn't a destination you reach once and then you're done. It's a state that must be maintained. And what maintains it are the same practices that created it in the first place. Some of the most successful people I know, people who have built empires, who have affected thousands of lives, who have achieved extraordinary things, still start their day with these kinds of affirmations. They understand that no matter how far you've come, the foundation of continued success is your daily choices, beginning with how you choose to speak to yourself. I want to circle back to something I mentioned earlier, consistency. The power of these 5 statements isn't in saying them once or twice when you feel like it. The power is in saying them every single morning, whether you feel like it or not, until they become as natural and necessary as brushing your teeth. Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. The small discipline of this morning ritual, these few minutes spent directing your mind toward empowerment, weighs just ounces. But the regret of a life lived below your potential because you never took control of your internal dialogue, that weighs tons. You know, I'm often asked about the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. There are many differences, of course, but one of the most significant is this. Successful people have found a way to manage their internal state regardless of external circumstances. And it usually begins with how they start their day. The unsuccessful person wakes up and immediately checks their phone, bombarding their mind with other people's priorities, problems, and emergencies. They let the world rush in before they've had a chance to center themselves, and from that point on, they're in a reactive state, responding to life rather than creating it. The successful person, by contrast, begins the day with intention. They take those first precious minutes of consciousness to set their mental and emotional compass. They speak to themselves with purpose, with power, with expectation. And from that foundation, they engage with the world proactively rather than reactively. Which approach do you think yields better results? Let me share a personal story with you. Years ago, I was going through a particularly challenging time in my business. The economy had taken a downturn, clients were cutting back, and I was feeling the pressure. For several weeks, I woke up each morning with a knot in my stomach, immediately thinking about all the problems I had to solve that day. And you know what? Those were some of the least productive weeks of my career. The more I focused on the problems, the bigger they seemed to become. The more I worried about what might go wrong, the less creative I was in finding solutions. Then one morning, I remembered something I had taught others for years, but had temporarily forgotten myself. I sat up in bed and said out loud, I am responsible for how I respond to this situation. Something wonderful is going to happen today, perhaps an insight, perhaps an opportunity. I have everything I need to take the next step. I will focus on progress today, not perfection. And I choose gratitude for the lessons this challenge is teaching me. Did that immediately solve all my business problems? Of course not. But it changed how I approached those problems. It put me back in a creative, resourceful state rather than a fearful, reactive one. And from that state, I began to see possibilities I hadn't seen before. Within 2 weeks, I had restructured parts of my business, reached out to past clients with a new proposition, and developed a new offering that actually became more successful than what I had been doing before the downturn. The circumstances hadn't changed, but I had changed how I was meeting those circumstances, and that made all the difference. Now, I want to address something important. Some of you might be thinking, Jim, this sounds like just another version of positive thinking. And I've tried positive thinking before. It doesn't work. But what I'm talking about goes deeper than what most people consider positive thinking. I'm not suggesting you deny reality or pretend that challenges don't exist. I'm not asking you to paste a smile on your face while ignoring problems that need to be addressed. What I am suggesting is that you consciously choose where to place your focus and how to frame your circumstances. And these 5 morning statements help you do exactly that. I am responsible isn't positive thinking, it's accurate thinking. It's recognizing the truth that while you can't control everything that happens to you, you absolutely control how you respond. Something wonderful is about to happen isn't a denial of difficulties. It's a decision to remain open to possibilities even in the midst of challenges. I have all that I need to succeed today isn't ignoring legitimate needs. It's choosing to maximize the resources you already have rather than being paralyzed by what you lack. I will focus on progress, not perfection, isn't lowering your standards. It's recognizing that all meaningful achievement comes through incremental improvement. And I choose gratitude isn't pretending that everything's great when it isn't. It's deciding to acknowledge and appreciate the good that exists alongside the challenges. This isn't positive thinking in the superficial sense. This is strategic thinking. This is choosing to direct your mind in ways that empower rather than diminish you. Now let me be very clear about something. These 5 morning statements are not a substitute for action. They're a precursor to more effective action. They put you in a state where you're more likely to make good decisions, persist through difficulties, identify opportunities, and ultimately produce better results. But you still have to do the work. You still have to make the calls, have the conversations, solve the problems, and take the risks. No amount of empowering self-talk can replace the necessity of consistent disciplined action toward your goals. The point is that how you speak to yourself determines the state from which you take those actions. And your state, your mental and emotional condition, has an enormous impact on the effectiveness of your actions. Have you ever tried to make important business calls when you were in a state of fear or self-doubt? It doesn't work very well, does it? Your voice lacks conviction. Your thinking is clouded. Your creativity is compromised. But when you make those same calls from a state of confidence, expectation, and resourcefulness, everything changes. Your voice carries authority. Your thinking is clear. Your creativity flows, and the results reflect that difference. That's why these 5 morning statements matter so much. They help you consistently create an internal state conducive to your success, regardless of what's happening around you. Let me share another observation I've made over the years. Most people vastly underestimate the impact of their internal dialogue and their external results. They invest enormous energy trying to change their circumstances while neglecting the thoughts and beliefs that are creating those very circumstances. It's like trying to grow a beautiful garden without paying any attention to the soil. You can plant the best seeds, but if the soil is poor, the results will be disappointing. Your internal dialogue, how you speak to yourself, is the soil in which your life grows. When you wake up saying, this is going to be a terrible day, I don't have what I need, everything's against me, you're creating poor soil, and no matter how hard you work in that soil, your results will be limited. But when you wake up saying these 5 empowering statements, I am responsible, something wonderful is about to happen. I have all that I need to succeed today. I will focus on progress, not perfection. I choose gratitude. You're creating rich, fertile soil. You're establishing conditions where success can naturally flourish. And here's what's amazing, this costs you nothing. It requires no special talent. It demands no outside resources. It's available to anyone willing to discipline their mind for a few minutes each morning. Which brings me to another critical point. This is a practice you can begin immediately. Not next month, not next week, not even tomorrow. You can begin right now by making a commitment to yourself that tomorrow morning when you first open your eyes, you will say these 5 statements with conviction before you do anything else. Write them down. Put them on your nightstand or tape them to your bathroom mirror. Do whatever it takes to remember them until they become second nature. And if you forget, if you slip back into old patterns of negative self-talk, don't beat yourself up. Simply recognize what's happened and reset. Speak these words to yourself whenever you remember, whether it's noon or night. Then recommit to saying them first thing the next morning. Remember, what you're doing here is establishing a new habit. And like any new habit, it takes repetition before it becomes automatic. Be patient with yourself, but also be persistent. The rewards of this simple practice are too valuable to miss because of a few days when you forget. Let's take a moment to imagine your life 6 months from now. If you consistently begin each day with these 5 statements, how might your outlook be different? How might your energy be different? How might your results be different? Imagine waking up each morning with a sense of personal power rather than dread. Imagine approaching challenges from a place of resourcefulness rather than resignation. Imagine seeing opportunities where others see only obstacles. That's what's possible when you take control of your internal dialogue. And it begins with these 5 simple statements spoken with conviction each morning. Now, I've been teaching these principles for many years, and I've heard from countless people who have transformed their lives through this practice. But I've also heard every possible objection. Jim, you don't understand my circumstances. Jim, positive self-talk can't pay my bills. Jim, you must have been born optimistic. It's not that easy for everyone. And I understand these objections, I really do. But here's what I've observed. The people who embrace this practice, despite their objections, are the ones who end up with different circumstances, who find ways to pay those bills, who develop an optimism based not on temperament, but on experience. Why? Because how you speak to yourself doesn't just change how you feel, it changes what you do. And what you do consistently over time changes everything else. So let me challenge you, try this for 30 days. Just 30 days. Say these 5 statements to yourself every morning with genuine conviction. Then watch what happens, not just to your mood, but to your actions, your decisions, your persistence, and ultimately your results. As I promised at the beginning, if you make these 5 statements part of your morning ritual, your life will begin to transform in ways you cannot even imagine. Not because the words themselves have magical properties, but because they change how you show up in the world. And how you show up determines what you experience and what you accomplish. I am responsible. Something wonderful is about to happen. I have all that I need to succeed today. I will focus on progress, not perfection. I choose gratitude. 5 simple statements, 5 powerful truths, 5 keys to unlocking your potential each day. The choice, as always, is yours. You can wake up to default patterns of thinking that may not serve you. Or you can wake up to these intentional, empowering statements that put you in control of your day. As you consider this choice, remember, your life is created by the small decisions you make each day, beginning with how you choose to speak to yourself in those first precious moments of consciousness. Choose wisely, my friends. Choose words that empower rather than diminish you. Choose words that open possibilities rather than close them. Choose words that align with the person you intend to become, not just the person you've been. And remember, in the words of Marcus Aurelius, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Take control of those thoughts, beginning with these 5 morning statements, and watch as your life transforms before your eyes. You know, when I think about the power of how we speak to ourselves, I'm reminded of an old Cherokee legend. Perhaps you've heard it. A grandfather is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he says to the boy. It is a terrible fight between 2 wolves. One is evil, he is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continues, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too. The grandson thinks about it for a minute and then asks his grandfather which wolf will win. The old Cherokee simply replies, the one you feed. Every morning when you wake up and speak to yourself, you're feeding one of those wolves. These 5 statements, I am responsible, something wonderful is about to happen, I have all that I need to succeed today. I will focus on progress, not perfection, and I choose gratitude. They feed the wolf of empowerment, possibility, resourcefulness, growth, and appreciation. And that's the wolf you want to win the fight for your mind and your life. So tomorrow morning when you open your eyes, remember to feed the right wolf. Speak these words to yourself with conviction. Let them sink deep into your consciousness. Allow them to shape not just your morning, but your entire day. Do this consistently, and I promise you, your life will never be the same. Thank you.